since 2013, I've said the same thing, and I haven't changed.
Anyone for the first time? Councillor Humphreys?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And since 2013, I've been in support of having the underpass in location A. I know it's an enormous amount of money, absolutely, but it was a priority recommendation by our staff and the Active Trails and Transportation Committee, as well as part of the master plan. It is DC's, and I feel it's valuable, and I think this is the area that's it's being developed, and I think it's going to be, again, we can showcase our trails. It continues to be regarded and respected throughout neighboring municipalities and beyond. So for me, I'm in support.
Councillor Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Without having the benefit of being at the council table for the previous term, I appreciate a lot of the comments around the table. Obviously, I'm uncomfortable with the amount for underpass A. I'll be brief. I support C and D, not A.
Well, we've all gone around once, and I'm sure we want to go around again. I would like to add my comments. I remember the first time this came, when we first sat on council, Mr. Warenberg came and proposed 4 underpasses. The rough estimate was $1 million per, and that was to be borne by the taxpayer. So we all basically coiled. What we did do, we made a commitment to the Trails and Master Plan, and we investigated the design, because we were told that without at least putting a design forward at $50,000 per, there would be no way to see if there were opportunities to cut back on that cost. And at the time, I didn't really understand what those opportunities might be, but they were borne out. The region, and later, and I didn't even think of it, I don't know if we had development charges. So what started out as $4 million for 4 underpasses is now turned out, and $4 million borne by the taxpayers, has turned out to be 3 underpasses. One's a bridge, and sorry, I'm just losing my thought. What I'm trying to say is that now it's not costing us anything to the taxpayers. So if it's costing $2.5 million and you divide it by 3, to me, if one costs more and the other one does, we're now getting 3 of them. Now, to get development charges means that we had to present to the developers a very convincing story or vision to them for them to say, okay, we'll include that as part of the development charges. I've got your hand, Councillor, and when I'm finished, I'll go back down. Thank you. So what we've got here is something that was going to cost us $4 million. Now we've got it borne by the development charges for the new development and borne by our master plan that obviously has vision and a great deal of work. And although I find that underpass A prohibitive, I really think that this is the opportunity to do it. And one last comment. I come from Don Mills, and we have 2 underpasses there. One that goes under the Parkway, east-west, and we're talking Lawrence, and the other one goes north-south underneath the railroad tracks that go there. And it's now, if you are going northbound, you'll see a rainbow on the underpass. That was done in 1960, and at the time, we all thought it was ridiculous that were there. But now they put a trail through there, and it's just magnificent, and it's celebrated. And what great insight and vision they had when they were putting the tracks and when they were building the parkway to put under those underpasses. So I am convinced that this is the opportunity, and now's the time to make that decision. Not only have we got this all figured out where and how, but the money and the funding has been put there. So if you think you're saving the taxpayers money and you can put the money into other parts of the trail, well, then that's fine, but we should direct staff to bring that out. So I would have full consideration as to what priorities are. I do trust what staff have brought forward, what Mr. Warenberg has brought forward from the very beginning, and I'm very much in favor of proceeding with this as it is. Second time, I had Councillor Gartner just previous, and Councillor Perry is anxious to say something. So, Councillor Gartner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We've had a lot of trouble in the past in securing land from the developers for our east-west trail system. Underpass A is important, but I would just like clarification through you, Mr. Chair, from Mr. Elliott. Mr. Elliott, when we did the last DC bylaw, did we put money in that for these 3 underpasses?
Mr. Elliott?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there's actually 8 underpasses, pedestrian underpasses in the DC background study.
Thank you. So we have collected the money for this, or will collect the money for this. Thank you. Then I will be in support of all 3 trail connections.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Perry?
Thank you. I was only going to point out that monies collected under the DCs for the trails are also collected and they're stored with our roads. There is no subdivision between DCs for this or DCs for roads. All of this fall under the same category. And as long as we are building roads, expanding infrastructure to accommodate for new growth, all of that could be used instead of this $1.75 million underpass for one underpass 130 meters away from a fully serviced and functional intersection.
If you don't mind, Councillor Perry, I didn't quite understand, but if Mr. Elliott could just clarify what Councillor Perry was just saying there.
Through you, Mr. Chair, if the DC funding for these 8 underpasses is in the category of the roads portion of the DC. So we collect roads DC money. It happens to be caused or identified in part to these underpasses. If we don't spend it on underpasses, we can spend it on other roads-related projects, street lighting, sidewalks, bikeway, other things that are in the road allowance, or we can reassign it from one underpass to another. So we can use it for underpasses, or we could use it for roads. But it's not to be used for parks, because
Understood.
that's a different component.
And I think Councillor Perry said that in so many words, and I thank you for making it clear for the rest of council. Anyone else for a second time? Councillor Thompson? Councillor Kim?
Since we're talking about development charges, let's weigh into it and stuff. Mr. Elliott, out of the 8 underpasses, how much did we anticipate collecting through DC charges to pay for all 8 underpasses?
Mr. Elliott?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there's approximately $4.2 million.
For 8 underpasses?
That's correct.
So this one underpass will take up 40% of the DCs for all 8 underpasses?
That's correct.
So what happens then when we don't have the DCs to build the other underpasses? Specifically, the one that's at St. John's next to the 404, which is needed to connect underpass A to underpass C. If we don't have the DCs for it, we'll take it from other road projects?
Through you, Mr. Chair, if we need it before then, yes, we would take it from the roads component. If we don't need it before then, it will be included in the next DC update.
Which, I think last term we had this conversation. The 2C development itself, off the top of my head, I believe in conversation with Mr. Bruno, will generate $40 million in development charges for all things, including facilities, road projects, everything else. So the rest of the development charge dollars that we need to generate for the projects within our 10-year capital program have to come from other development applications, which, in all reality, will have to come from infill projects because we'll be built out. And so let's keep that in mind when we're debating these development projects that are before us and saying, well, DCs are going to pay for it, so it's okay. Well, yeah, in a perfect world, but I think we're going to have some challenges with DCs. We've seen from the 10-year capital forecast that in 2019, 2020, the DCs will be down to only $2 million because of all of the other projects that we have, So when I talk about priorities and I talk about identifying where you want to spend the money, well, if we only have 4 million collected off of DCs for all of these underpasses, and this one's going to take 40% of it, and we can use this money for other road projects, is this the priority of all the other projects that are out there? In my opinion, it's not. I think there are other ways for us to address the issue of having people navigate through that section of town without it having that cost. And I just think that it comes down to making good choices. What's the right way to use the dollars? And to me, it's not this one.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kim?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm torn on both sides because I understand the rationale for both sides. Councillor Thompson raised a good point about DCs and also the future needs of St. John's underpass intersecting the 404. Now, in the DC discussion, through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Elliott, when does the next cycle begin to assess our next DC allotment or what we can take in? Because is there a time factor here that if we don't spend a certain amount of the DCs that came in this cycle, that the opportunity will be lost, so that I guess what I'm getting at is we don't know when the St. John's and 404 underpass is going to happen. And so if that happens in 2025, will that impact Councillor Thompson's argument there?
Mr. Elliott, I think the cycle was the first question.
Certainly. I'll speak to that. The DC background study was, and the DC background bylaw was updated in the early part of 2014. We must do it before the 5th anniversary of that in 2019. I believe it's April 14th, 2019. So that's the latest point at which time we have to update and renew our bylaw. We can do it earlier. For example, if the region came to us and told us that they were going to be looking for a certain amount of funding for the St. John's 404 interchange from our DC contribution, we would immediately open our bylaw and add that in and redo the whole bylaw at that point. Right now, I have no funding in my bylaw for a St. John's 404 interchange.
Okay, so then, because I'm totally in agreement with Councillor Thompson's argument, and we do, I mean, that's underpass that will be sorely needed, and I want to make sure that we do have funding for that. So based on what you just stated in terms of we can just reopen the bylaw, you're saying that there's no lost opportunity cost here by not going ahead with underpass A.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't see it as that. This is a hard service. It's referred to a hard service. 100% of the costs are DC eligible. We basically set the envelope based on our needs and do the development charge that way, as opposed to for parks or for library, where it's based on a 10-year history. Average service level determines the quantum, and then we fill the envelope with projects to spend that. This way we stuff the envelope first and then add it up, and that becomes the DC charge. So in our next bylaw, if we need to put additional, perhaps there's additional underpasses we want to put in, or we take some out, if we have not spent the money from this cycle, it just goes into as a credit towards the next DCs. So you don't lose it.
No, I understand we don't lose it, but does it, if we don't spend X amount, doesn't it mean that we collect less because the surface levels are lower in the next cycle?
No, not on the hard surfaces.
Okay.
That's the distinction. The soft surfaces, we call them soft. That's where your 90% formula is. You have to use a 10-year average service level, and that's the DC amount that the maximum DC amount that you're allowed to collect based on service level. For hard surfaces, roads, you make your list of projects, cost it out, and that's the DC you can collect.
Councillor?
Well, I think in the next couple of minutes, I'm going to have to think long and hard, but I think I'm leaning towards that this underpass A is too expensive for the service that's going to provide. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Dahl?
Mr. Chair, it's obviously a challenging discussion, and I think we need to come back to, regardless of what the funding model is, whether or not it's the best value for the money. And I agree with Councillor Thompson that I don't believe it is the best value. I would rather see an underpass on Wellington, quite frankly, for the north-south trail down by, oh gosh, just down at the bottom of John West Way here. Mr. Johnny, what's that called? What's that trail? I can't remember. Brain cramp.
Nokita.
Is that?
Yeah, the Nikita.
Thank you. The Tim Jones Trail, right, something like that. Mr. Chair, I'd like to put an amendment on the floor, please.
Go ahead, Mayor Dahl.
That clause 2 be amended by deleting A, the letter A after the word underpasses. That clause 3 be amended by deleting $1,962,790 and replaced with $212,882. And the clause 4 be amended by deleting the word 3 and replaced with the word 2. And that is conveniently written out here that the clerk can
Thank
rephrase.
you. Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Thompson. There was just one number there, Mayor Dahl, to make sure that I'm correct. The addition of the funding of 1.9 million, and you have
212.
212. Is that the additional amount, or is that what C&D is?
That's the amount for the, Mr. Clerk? I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe in your report on page 7 of the report and continuous page 43, it shows that there's a current funding gap of $212,882,000 for just C&D, and the amendment proposed by the mayor, if assuming it was approved, would make up that gap.
Thank you. And that is in addition to what was approved at budget. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Because I'm looking at a chart that says it's 700,000, but now what we approved plus this. And is that clear to council members? Councillor Perry?
Could I get clarification on why we're going this route? It seems contradictory to me. In the past, whenever we've dealt with these types of things and wanted to move forward on parts, we were told that we had to defeat the motion first and then put on something different. So this seems very contradictory to the initial motion.
I'll ask the clerk to speak.
Thank you. Through Mr. Chair, of course, contrary amendments would not be in order. It would be my advice that this is not a contrary amendment. It's a clarifying amendment to narrow the scope of the motion on the floor to discuss underpasses C and D only. And if we look at it from the perspective that the adoption of that amendment and perhaps subsequently the adoption of the main motion as amended would not preclude council from adding a further amendment specifically related to underpass A. It's just clarifying the scope of the motion as it currently is, or narrowing it.
Councillor? Thank you. Comments, questions? I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of the amendment, hands high. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That carries. Motion as amended. Oh, those opposed? Thank you. That carries, Mr. Clerk. Back to the main motion as amended. All those in favor? Hands high, please. Opposed? That carries. We have 2 more items left, Mr. Clerk. Mr. Downey? We're pointing at Mr. Downey.
Mr. Chair, I just want to ensure council that we have approved the regional's cost estimate. It has yet to go to tender, so we may be back again with revised numbers for C and D. But it might go up or it might go down, but I just wanted to ensure that council we're moving forward now with the region based on the estimates that they have provided us, and they will go to tender with those estimates.
Thank you, Mr. Downey, for the clarification. Councillor Thompson?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to put forward a motion. As the clerk stated, while we've narrowed the scope, we didn't necessarily deal with underpass A, and so I think it'd be important to give direction to staff so it doesn't come back to us again. And so I would put forward a motion that we not proceed with underpass A. Not.
Is that okay,
No,
Mr.
yes.
Clerk?
That the town not proceed with underpass A. So it's clear that we will not bring it forward. Because I look in the alternatives and it speaks to a deferral of the project. And I know at the budget, we asked for a deferral pending a further report. And so I think here it's important for us to be clear in our direction with regards to underpass A to staff. And so I'm putting forward that motion that we not proceed with the construction of underpass A.
I'll acknowledge the seconder is Councillor Maracas. Comments, questions? Councillor Perry?
If the region wanted to come to the table, I know they've said in the past that they don't. You know, I don't want to have it, you know, completely off the table and off the books, but I'm not looking to move forward as things are right now, so I'll be voting against this at this point in time.
Councillor Maracas?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If Councillor Thompson wouldn't mind, I don't know if he would take this into consideration, maybe we could just add, unless the region decides to come up with some money, we could revisit the issue, if you're okay with something like that.
Mr. Clerk? Is that a... It was just clarified a bit more, unless the region ponies up. We're... Mr. Downey, a comment, please.
Through you, Mr. Chair, with regards to crossing A, I'll call it crossing A as opposed to underpass A, there is perhaps an opportunity to look at an alternative to the underpass. We're not quite sure. And so we may continue to pursue that with the region to find out whether or not there is any funding available for an alternative to an underpass. And we will be reporting back to council with regards to that. The reason for that is if that is not available, then we will need to modify our request for trail connections at that point. And so we wanted to ensure that those discussions were closed with regards to either whether it's an underpass or an at-grade, so that we can continue with the planning and development of our trails.
Thank you, Mr. Downey. And if, Councillor Thompson, if that's understood in the direction of this, would that be understood, Mr. Downey, that you would pursue the alternate and make them aware that we still have to have that connected? Mr. Downey?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, or sorry, Mr. Chair, so I clearly understand, we are not coming back with an underpass proposal again. However, that doesn't mean that we would not pursue with the region alternatives to the underpass. And so we will be doing that. If we find that there is an opportunity to move forward with some funding from the region, we will then report back to council on that, but you won't be seeing an underpass. It will be an alternative to that and trail connections associated with that.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Councillor Abel. Absolutely, I'm fine with alternatives coming back. I think that, you know, we've made a change to the plan, so I would expect some sort of alternative. To Councillor Perry's point, I mean, all things being equal, I wouldn't expect to see it, but it can always be reconsidered. It's within our purview to reconsider any matter, especially if, you know, something significant has changed, like the region reconsidering its funding model or something like that. I would expect staff to bring it to the table and allow council to make that determination or not. I just wanted to provide clear direction so that staff can now start looking at alternatives or different approaches. And so that was the intent of saying, we're done with underpass A. Let's now explore how we can move forward.
Thank you. I'm going to call the question then. All those in, are there any further comments? Okay, could we have the motion read, please?
Through Mr. Chair, I believe the motion is that Council does not support proceeding with underpass A without prior support of financial support of York Region.
All right. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, that carries, Mr. Clerk. Are we done with this one? Okay. For now? All right. Maybe there's an underpass under Wellington. We're going to go next. I don't know. We'll go to number 4, please, and that was brought up by Mayor Daw.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At this point, I'll move it as is.
Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Kim? Mayor Daw, would you start us off?
Yes, and I was indeed having some discussions today with Councillor Kim and some other councillors, and just I think to provide some clarity with respect to the next proposed public planning meeting for the Highland Gate redevelopment proposal. I would like to suggest January the 21st, and I did have some consultations with the clerk's office with respect to that date. I think from all the information that I've been able to glean today, I think that this probably works best, and staff is able to fit this in the calendar. So I would put that amendment on the floor. Yes, well, don't ask me, ask the chair.
Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly, while from a calendar perspective, the 21st definitely works. I'm still trying to secure an alternative location, so it would be my suggestion, since in the motion there already is an authorization, assuming this is passed, for the town clerk to make amendments to the 2016 meeting calendar as required, that the direction to staff, we already have the direction from Special Council Public Planning that another meeting be held, but that the direction to staff be a little less specific than just January 21st. We also have identified that January 27th might be a good option based on the meeting date. So if we provide the flexibility based on finding an appropriate location for that meeting, it would be beneficial.
Mr. Clerk, then by the end of January?
Oh, absolutely.
Would that?
Absolutely.
So the clerk's office could meet that criteria? Yeah. Then I would put that amendment on the floor, Mr. Chair.
Any other dates, Mayor Daw?
Well, I was going to take all the July dates out, but I'm thinking that the councillor to the right of me would oppose that.
I think what I'll ask is if anyone else has dates that would we group them all together and do it as one amendment, Mr. Clerk? Or do you want to go one at a time?
Through Mr. Chair, it's always the preference for a mover and a seconder to move one motion as one. If there is consensus, we could do it that way, but it's probably cleaner just to do them as separate amendments.
Very good. Do I have a seconder for Mayor Daw? Councillor Kim, you're seconding Mayor Daw's amendment? Yeah. You can. Are you seconding? And you can comment too.
Has staff looked into any dates in December? I know December is pretty packed, but is there an appetite for a December date? Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr.
I'll ask the
Hike.
clerk. I'm getting a lot of shakes. So.
Thank you. Through Mr. Chair, in discussions with the Director of Planning, while we could potentially accommodate a meeting in December, it would be very, very difficult given several factors. The first being that securing an offsite location, especially during the month of December, can be very difficult due to a lot of demand on facilities. It should be noted that the previous series of meetings, the first meeting, it took almost 2 months to make all the necessary arrangements to host that, to get that meeting in place in an off-site location acceptable for that purpose. So while we could, in very tight time circumstances, consider December, we do not recommend it for numerous reasons, not the least of which is the members might recall there was some discussion at the public planning meeting about the developer and the applicant and the residents or the different parties continuing to negotiate up until the end of November. So that would create an exceedingly tight time frame to report anything back of, if at all.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Seeing no other comments or questions, I'll call. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries, Mr. Clerk. Councillor Thompson?
I'd like to put forward, I guess, an amendment to add a couple meetings, as I've done every year for the last couple.
Not during the summer, though?
Absolutely, during the summer. You know, I will bring up the point that, you know, you'll note that there are only 10 items on our agenda this evening. And in the summertime, we typically range from 25 to 30 in the months of July and or August. And so, you know, I come from a retail world where you build your business around the busy times. And so it seems that we need another meeting in the summer to deal with the caseload. And so I will again propose that we have a meeting on July 26th and on August 30th. Sorry, August 23rd.
I'm sorry, the August date?
23rd.
23rd? Are you seconding, Councillor Maracas?
And I'd like it to be noted that this time it's not pending determination of whether it's warranted or not. I don't think I have support to my left. I just heard a comment. But in all honesty, I mean, I put this forward because I've seen it every single year since I've been on council, that the load is such that we always end up deferring items. And even this past summer, if you look at it, you know, we ended up canceling that secondary July meeting, and so we ended up having one at the end of August as a result of it, and items did get pushed forward. And so I think that, you know, we're all here to get the business of the town done, and it's necessary to have these meetings. I don't take any pleasure in it. I'm sure staff don't want to be here and probably don't like the idea of it, but at the end of the day, we need it. So that's why I put them forward.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments, questions? Councillor Gardner? Councillor Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the April calendar,
We're going to, just on these 2 dates in the summer.
oh, sorry, I'm ahead of myself.
Councillor Tom?
I just don't understand how our provincial and federal cousins take such a fat holiday in the summer, and so I agree with the changes, and I find it amazing that they can take the time off that they do.
Thank you, Councillor. On this amendment, all those in favor? Opposed? Carries, Mr. Clerk. The mayor has a cottage. Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm looking at the April calendar.
Yes.
April the 11th and 12th are both evenings for the Seder, which is part of the Passover holiday. I would ask that the Heritage Advisory Committee be changed. That
Yes.
might be easy. It would be hard to change a council meeting, so I would ask that if there are any items that are of importance to me, that I could let the clerk know and they could be deferred from that council meeting on the 12th.
Yes.
Thank you. And with respect to the October calendar,
Councillor, did you want, is the Heritage Advisory okay?
no, it's not.
So we would have to, Mr. Clerk?
I'm sorry, can I just clarify, because on the calendar we have Passover listed and starting on the evening of Friday the 22nd and ending on Saturday, April the 30th. And that's the best information we got from...
Okay, I will check it for next
Because-
week, but when I looked today, I got these dates.
Is that good enough?
You know what?
2015?
So let me keep this with me for next week, and we'll talk, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you. Anyone else, council? All right, then I'm going to call a vote on item 4 as amended. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries, Mr. Clerk. We have one more item on the agenda, and that's item 7. Councillor Gardner, you pulled it.
Thank you. Move as is.
Seconded, Councillor Perry. Comments? Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. And actually, there's been a lot of discussion on this already. And I think that all of my questions have been answered.
Thank you. Councillor Marakis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to, I guess, Mr. Downey. Have the applicants of Highland Gate Development, Inc. been duly notified of the draft policy?
Point of order, this is outside of the scope right now.
Well, no, the second clause says that it would, or sorry, the third one says that the draft tree removal, pruning, and compensation policy be applicable to all planning applications that are currently under review by the town. I'm just wondering if they've been duly notified.
The motion is to refer.
Motions to refer it? Okay, that's fine, but I figured I was just asking that question about that. Okay.
Thank you. Seeing no other comments, I'm going to call to question. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries, Mr. Clerk. Well,
New business.
I was so glad not to see anything else regarding closed session, but
New business.
new business. I'll start on my right. Councillor Marakis. Councillor Gardner.
Nothing, thank you.
Councillor Thompson. Thank you.
I do actually. If possible, actually, I was hoping to direct this to our regional representative. It's my understanding that regional council will be looking at a motion or a report with regards to the election of the regional chair. And I was wondering if the mayor is aware of when that is to happen.
Mayor Doe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The notice of motion hasn't come forward yet, so no, I don't. I will find out Thursday.
So I guess my question is, I'd very much like this council to weigh in on that question and provide, I guess, either a recommendation or feedback to the mayor. So is that best dealt with through a notice of motion? So perhaps through you to the clerk, how best to put this on the agenda?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe a notice of motion would be the best approach. If I seem to recall, I think we've actually discussed this issue before. I'll have to check the records, but a notice of motion would be ideal. In addition to the regional's consideration, the committee might be aware that there's actually a bill currently before the Standing Committee on the Legislative Assembly at the Legislative Assembly of Ontario on this very topic as well. So it might be an opportunity to comment on both that bill as well as anything that happens at the region.
So
Thank you,
perhaps,
Mr.
perhaps
Clerk.
I'll have a conversation with the mayor and we can proceed forward.
Okay. Mayor Doe, new business?
No, sir.
Councillor Humphreys, new business? Councillor Tom? Councillor Kim?
I just want to recognize Councillor Gardner tonight. Her hair looks very nice. And
What about Tom? What about Councilor Marakis?
Oh, and Councillor Marakis.
Is it attractive? Is it attractive?
That was a bit unnerving, that one. Councillor Perry, new business? That concludes new business. We are, could I have a motion? Would someone move a motion to go into closed session, please? Following adjournment. Councillor Marakis, Councillor Mayor Daw. You waved your hand. Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? I'm going to accept that.
Yeah. Can you announce that? We still have to do adjournment, though. So can you announce carried?
Can we call for an adjournment now, Mr. Clerk?
Yes.
Moved by Councillor Perry, seconded by Councillor Tom. All those in favor? And that passes, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you.
Thank you, staff. Yeah.